broadcast of It's Time with Reverend Nathaniel W. Martin. Here is Reverend Martin.
All right, thank you, Dr. Blackwell. Let me hasten to say Hotep Habaragani, since we are still observing Kwanzaa, to my Africana Studies colleagues, contemporaries, and seekers after the truth all. And let me go on to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, but certainly never good night and never ever goodbye, because I always find goodbyes traumatizing. In memory of my late wife, Carrie, I still, amen, am traumatized by her death, her passing. So, you are looking or listening to, I trust, the social justice program called It's Time. And let me hasten on to say that we still have a church, and we are located, and the name of our church is New Life Institutional Baptist Church here in the city of Los Angeles, and we're located at 8916 South Main Street. And we're being hosted by our sister church, the Shiloh Missionary Christian Church, pastored by my good friend, Reverend Dr. Della F. Hollins. And whenever you're over the way and you think about us on Sunday or Wednesday night, feel free to come by. We love to see your face in the place. As I often say, I've gotten to the point now where I'm just glad to see somebody come in and occupy the seats. Don't ever say that a bench member is not important. I think bench members are the most important ones of all, because without them, there is no us. Okay, so you're always welcome, and we look forward to seeing you. And if you don't want to say nothing, I understand. I'm just glad to see you come out and worship with us. All right? All right. Now, as we, this is a program called It's Time. It's a social justice program. And so it's not so preachy, but we do try to address some of the issues that we are facing at this particular time. And sometimes we try to reflect on the historical background for our broadcast. Let me read in your hearing or recite for you some of the scriptures that we stand on and that motivate and influence this broadcast. We believe in the book of Proverbs 14 and 34, which says, righteousness exalteth the nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. We also follow Jesus' injunction in the 12th chapter of Luke, that last clause of the first verse, which says, beware the leaven of the Pharisees, which is hypocrisy. And also, we are guided by the Paul's letter to the Ephesian church, 6th chapter, verses 11 and 12, which says, put on, therefore, the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. And please believe me, the hypocrisy in our national government is legend. And we need to pray for our country when we see the things that are going on there in Washington. They are being presided over by these DEI people who claim they're against DEI, but yet that's what they represent. J.D. Vance and Donald Trump represent DEI. Yes. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's the only way they could get to be in those positions, is because of affirmative action or DEI, because they certainly do not merit those positions. However, they are in charge, large and in charge. RFK Jr. is a case in point. He's the director over Health and Human Services, which means all those departments that are up under that, including the CDC, are now at the mercy of this heretic as far as his belief in medicine and the efficacy of vaccines is concerned. So we're in for a rough 4 years of his administration. Anytime you see children dying in Texas from measles, we have wiped out measles, but now measles is back because the parents don't want to get the children vaccine, and they now have an advocate in the White House, in the federal government. So we are in for some rough, bumpy rides going forward. And speaking of RFK, you know that President Trump has released the files on the assassinations of Martin Luther King Jr., John Fitzgerald Kennedy, and Robert F. Kennedy. All those files are now have been released to the public. John Kennedy was killed November 22nd, 1963. It was on a Friday. I never forget it because I was a little kid in high school. And I know how sad we were when we got the news around lunchtime. And some people can still tell you where they were when they got the news that President Kennedy had been killed. And the impact that it has had on history cannot be measured. I made some notes here. It says that today we look at some of the views of the late President JFK and his brother, who was the Attorney General of the United States, Robert Fitzgerald Kennedy Jr. Robert Francis Kennedy Jr. All right. Especially as it relates to the relationship with the nation of Israel. Had President Kennedy lived, Dimona nuclear plant, a lot of people don't know that the Dimona nuclear plant would never have been built because President Kennedy was objected to the Zionist plan. Reasoning that if Israel developed the nuclear bomb, they would be more aggressive than peace-seeking toward their neighbors. By their neighbors, we're talking about all of the neighbors in the region, including Jordan, Egypt, Syria, Iraq, and Iran, just to name a few. And would be less likely to listen to Washington. All of which has come true. Remember, you're talking about the early 1960s. Israel had not been in existence that long. They began to be in existence in 1948, and but that was before Hamas. Even then, the Israelis were aggressive and belligerent toward the Palestinians. President Kennedy wanted Israel to get along with the Palestinians, the Egyptians, and Syria. Israel had always had designs on Iraq and Iran. Benjamin Netanyahu was always trying to lure the United States into an attack on Iran, and it succeeded. in seducing the United States into attacking Iraq after 9/11, even though the Iraqis had nothing to do with 9/11. But because of the political climate that had developed, the Israelis were able to seduce the Bush regime into attacking Iraq, as though Iraq had something to do with 9/11. President Kennedy had tried to steer the Zionists away from the racist, aggressive, and ultra-nationalistic impulses that have led to where we are today. So if Kennedy had lived and got that second term, history would have been very much different. Now let's look at the American Zionist Council, which is the parent organization of AIPAC. Under Attorney General Robert Kennedy, the American Zionist Council, AZC for short, was politically requested to register as agents of a foreign country. I said requested, they were not demanded. Because by law, organizations that promote or lobby on behalf of a foreign government must register and account for their finances and activities. This request was made in November 21, 1962, and the AZC, that I mean the American Zionist Council, stalled Attorney General Robert Francis Kennedy and the president. Okay, remember, the AZC is the parent organization of AIPAC, and AIPAC lobbies on Capitol Hill, flies young Congress people to Israel, and funds the campaigns of many politicians, including former President Joe Biden, former Vice President Kamala Harris, and current Minority Speaker of the House Hakeem Jeffries, and many others. In fact, anybody that opposed the Zionist lobby, like Cori Bush, Democratic representative from Missouri's 1st Congressional District, when she spoke out against Israel's policy in Gaza, AIPAC ran a counter opponent against her in order to take her seat. So AIPAC has a great deal of influence. Now, when I said Zionist, a Zionist is different from the Jew. Joe Biden was a Zionist. You don't have to be a Jew to be a Zionist. A Zionist is one who wants the very current society of Israel to continue to maintain only Israelis and only this group of Israelis. Remember, it's different between Zionism and Judaism, or being a Jew. You don't have to be a Jew to be a Zionist. Where was that? I said they were successful in defeating Representative Cori Bush. She was from Missouri. This was also done unto Cynthia McKinney, who was a Democratic representative from Georgia, and many others. All right. After the assassination of President John Fitzgerald Kennedy, the new president, President Johnson, was far more accommodating to the Israeli lobby. Thus, the demand of the Attorney General RFK administration was made moot by the Johnson administration. In fact, the new Attorney General, Nicholas Katzenbach, dropped the request, and to this hour, AIPAC has never registered as a foreign agent. Mind you, all other lobbyists from foreign governments on Capitol Hill have to register as a foreign agent. In other words, they are registering a different country from the United States of America. And this is very important. Let me see. Did I lose my spot? Let me see. Okay, yeah. The Kennedy administration demanded to see and inspect the Dimona nuclear plant before it went online, but it was ignored by the Israelis. President Lyndon Baines Johnson was more favorable to all Israeli demands and began to align U.S. policy with Israel's demands. President John Fitzgerald Kennedy had criticized Western imperialism. He supported the right of return contained in the United Nations Resolution 194, paragraph 11, that would have let the Palestinians have the right of return to their homeland. But Israel was adamantly against the Palestinian right of return. And remember, this was when Israel had only been established since 1948, so it was still a young nation, even as it is today, young nation, because our country is over 200 years old. So you can see that had President Kennedy not been assassinated in November 22nd, 1963, history would have been totally different because the makeup of the Middle East would have definitely been different, because Kennedy's approach to the Middle East was far different from Lyndon Baines Johnson and the Israeli Zionist lobby, and you can see where we are today in that. So it was serendipitous that President Kennedy was assassinated. President Lyndon Baines Johnson was a marshmallow in Israel's hands. In 1967, when the Israeli Air Force attacked the USS Liberty, along with their Navy torpedo boats, and the ship sent a distress signal that reached the White House, President Johnson said that he would not embarrass an ally, meaning Israel, and he launched no rescue for the stricken ship. 34 crew members were killed, 171 were wounded, and the ship sustained major damage. Despite all that, they were able to survive and limp back into port. Some of the background on that was that eventually the Israeli government paid in the millions of dollars, first for the repair of the ship and then to the families of the crewmen that were killed, and then in general damages. So they covered it up. I'm losing my spot. I keep trying to make commentary. Let me see. The Israelis said it was a tragic mistake, but the surviving crew members said it was deliberate because the ship had been in those waters for days, and the Israeli Air Force had been in the area flying around the ship for days and communicating with the ship. So it was no accident. They knew what that ship was, but they intended to sink that ship so that there would not be any record of any of the survivors. But unfortunately for Israel, the people survived. Also, in the spring of 1965, AIPAC applied for a federal tax exemption, and the U.S. Treasury Department granted it. And guess what? It was backdated to 1953. So you can see what might have been had Kennedy not been killed. He would have won re-election, and Israel's Zionists would not have gained the foothold that they now have. AIPAC would not be the political bully that it has become, and Israel would not have developed the nuclear bomb and become the tyrant that it is today. The assassination of President Kennedy was serendipitous for Israel. It allowed Menachem Begin and Benjamin Netanyahu would have had to steer a different course. And so it was not only the fact that there was a danger from the U.S. Mafia to kill John Fitzgerald Kennedy, but there was a danger that from the Israeli side, that they would like to assassinate John Fitzgerald Kennedy. So you had at least 4 groups of people, organizations rather, who had the method, the manner, and the means, and a grudge against President Kennedy because he was at the same time trying to get better relations with the island nation of Cuba. And I was dumbfounded to find out that it was not John Fitzgerald Kennedy who was sending all those attempted means to assassinate Cuba, but it was actually under Eisenhower and the succeeding administrations that all of that was done, including the assassination of Patrice Lumumba. For a long time, I thought that Kennedy had that done, but Kennedy was on the other side he was trying to get good relations with the Congo and with Patrice Lumumba. And so we never, it was the CIA, we know it was the CIA that killed Patrice Lumumba because the CIA agent in charge had been bragging about it, and he even wrote a book about it. And so John Fitzgerald Kennedy or neither his brother can be held accountable for the death of either the attempted assassination of Fidel Castro or the death of Patrice Lumumba. Turns out that the policy of JFK and Robert Kennedy toward those other nations was far different from what the John Foster Dulles and Adam Dulles, his brother, had on the table at that time. And so you can see how history dovetail, and like we said, it was serendipitous for Israel that Kennedy was assassinated. Now, I'm not saying Israel had anything to do with it, but it was very blessed when JFK was assassinated, and when his brother RFK, not this fool that's head of HHS, I think that's his uncle or nephew. But anyway, you can see how things worked out subsequent. So if JFK had survived, then the Israelis would never have developed that nuclear program. And as soon as they had that bomb, they became bullies. And that's what they are over there today. That's why they raised so much sand. In 1967, they had that 6-day war, and where they went to took over the Golan Heights. And we must remember that that wasn't the first time, because on the 1956 they attacked Egypt, and Eisenhower told them they had to get out of there, get that land back. And so Eisenhower put his foot down. He was different from Joe Biden, who looked like he was just a sycophant to Netanyahu. But that's because Joe Biden is a Zionist, and so that has tarnished his legacy for all the good that he attempted to do. All right, so as you can see, politics rather, makes strange bedfellows. Strange bedfellows. So we can't always look at the mafia and say they were the ones that killed JFK. We got to look at these other folks who also had an interest and who would benefit and who did benefit from the assassination of John Fitzgerald Kennedy and from the assassination of Robert Francis Kennedy. All right. Now, we find that 5 minutes? All right. We find that here at home that the Congress has passed and is attempting to reconcile with the Senate a $180 billion bunch of cuts to Medicaid and Medicare. And they're even going to hit SNAP. I forget what the letters mean, a supplemental, nutritional, something like that program. But all those programs are going to be cut. The Children's Health Insurance Program, which helps indigent parents to have their children insured so they can get their shots and their vaccinations, that is going to be cut. And the Medicare physicians are going to have to take a 2.8% cut, and that is going to be passed on to the Medicare recipients, which is people like you and myself, because I'm on Medicare, and the state Medicaid cuts percentage to California. Boy, call me at this time. To California is going to be in the range of 24.5% to 34.5%. So that's going to be a lot of cutting of programs, of needed Medicare and Medicaid programs. Now, the Republicans are trying to hide behind the fig leaf, say, well, we didn't put Medicare specifically, Medicaid specifically. No, but they do it surreptitiously. They set up the program that will cut Medicare and Medicaid. They much like the people that crucified Jesus. They crucified Jesus and made it where he couldn't get away, and then they sit down and watched him. And that's the way these Republicans are setting up these programs that they know is going to affect the poor, people like myself and others. And then they will swear we didn't know it was going to be like that. Just like the John Roberts crew did on the Civil Rights Bill, or Civil Rights Acts, when they went back and gutted certain sections. In other words, they left the program there, but they left the outer shell of the program, but they gutted its force, its strength, and they're taking it away. And that's why you got all of these voter suppression laws being passed all across these formerly Confederate states. All right, now I guess my time is about up, and I trust that we have not been seditious, because I don't mean to be seditious. I just want to get a clear reckoning from the historical background as to why things are what they are today. All right? And again, if you're working on a job and they don't want to pay you what you're worth while you're young, don't get caught up in that trap of working paycheck to paycheck. You can't do it. If they don't want to pay you what you're worth, take my considered advice and don't work for them. Thank you, Doc. We out of here. Love you.
My good days outweigh my bad days, yes they do. I just say thank you, Lord.